My name is Megan Roberts, and I'm 32 years old. What should have been a perfect Sunday afternoon at my best friend Audrey's baby shower turned into the moment that would change both our lives forever. The decorations were flawless, the cake was beautiful, and Audrey was glowing in her blue maternity dress. Everything seemed perfect until I noticed my husband Kevin scanning the room with a strange intensity. Suddenly, he gripped my arm and whispered urgently in my ear, "We have to go. Now." I was completely stunned. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from and subscribe if you haven't already. What happened next changed everything I thought I knew about the people closest to me. Audrey Miller and I had been inseparable since our freshman year of college. We were randomly assigned as roommates at Boston University and clicked instantly. She was studying psychology while I was pursuing journalism, but we shared the same sense of humor, taste in music, and dreams for the future. We stayed roommates all 4 years, and even after graduation, we made sure to remain in each other's lives. Our friendship had always been one of those rare connections where time and distance didn't matter. When we were both 26, within 3 months of each other, we each got married. I married Kevin, an ER nurse with a calming presence and endless compassion. Audrey married Jake, a successful financial advisor with charm and ambition to spare. We joked about our synchronized lives when both couples bought houses in the same Boston suburb only 15 minutes apart. For years, we maintained our Friday night dinner tradition, alternating between our homes. Kevin and Jake developed their own friendship, though not as deep as mine and Audrey's. They were cordial and could talk sports and investments when needed. But there was something about Jake that Kevin never fully warmed to. At the time, I dismissed it as just different personality types. 7 months ago, Audrey called me breathless with excitement. After a year of trying, she was pregnant. I still remember exactly where I was standing in my kitchen when I got the news. I felt a genuine surge of happiness for her that momentarily overshadowed my own situation. You see, Kevin and I had been trying for almost 3 years with no success. We'd gone through basic fertility testing that showed nothing obviously wrong, leaving us in that frustrating, unexplained infertility category that offered no clear solutions. "I'm so happy for you, AUD," I told her, and I meant it even as I felt that familiar pang of envy. That night, I cried in Kevin's arms. A complicated mix of joy for my friend and grief for what we hadn't yet achieved. When Audrey asked me to plan her baby shower, I threw myself into it completely. Maybe too completely, looking back. I wanted everything to be perfect for her, as if creating the perfect celebration could somehow compensate for the complicated feelings I was working through. I spent hours on Pinterest, coordinating with the other bridesmaids, Sarah and Rachel, to create the ideal event. The weeks of planning were a welcome distraction from the latest negative pregnancy test sitting in our bathroom trash. I carefully selected invitations, ordered custom decorations, planned games, and coordinated the menu. Through it all, Audrey was appreciative but increasingly distant. Looking back, I should have noticed the changes sooner. Audrey, once spontaneous and independent, began canceling our solo lunch dates. Jake started joining our previously girls-only shopping trips. When I did see Audrey alone, she seemed quieter, checking her phone frequently. At the time, I attributed it all to the pregnancy. First-time motherhood was a big adjustment, and everyone handles it differently, right? There were other signs too, now glaring in hindsight. Jake, who had always been attentive, became increasingly present in every aspect of Audrey's life. He began speaking for her in conversations, answering questions directed at her with a tight smile on his face. "Audrey needs to rest," he would say. Or, "We think it's better if Audrey avoids too much exertion during the pregnancy." I remember one dinner at their house about 4 months into her pregnancy when Audrey dropped a glass in the kitchen. Jake's reaction seemed disproportionate. He didn't yell, but his voice went cold as he methodically helped clean up while saying, "This is what happens when you try to do too much." Audrey's face had gone blank, an expression I couldn't read at the time but now recognize as fear. The morning of the baby shower, I woke up with nervous excitement. Kevin was unusually quiet as he got ready, but I was too preoccupied to really notice. We arrived at the rented event space 2 hours early to set up. Sarah and Rachel were already there, hanging blue and silver decorations and arranging the gift table. Everything looked perfect as guests began arriving. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, casting a golden glow over the room. A table filled with elegantly arranged food, a signature mocktail station, and a three-tier cake decorated with delicate blue fondant booties. A photo station with props and a custom backdrop read, "Welcome Baby Boy Miller," in elegant script. It should have been a perfect day. If only I had been more observant of what was happening right in front of me. By 2 p.m., the event space was filled with 30 women, a mix of college friends, coworkers, and family members from both Audrey's and Jake's sides. The atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. I'd created a playlist of Audrey's favorite songs playing softly in the background, and the scent of fresh flowers filled the air. When Audrey arrived, there was an audible murmur of appreciation. She looked radiant in a pale blue maternity dress that highlighted her 7-month baby bump. Her blonde hair was styled in loose waves, and she wore a mommy-to-be sash I had specially ordered. For a moment, she looked like the embodiment of maternal bliss. But Jake was right beside her, his hand firmly on the small of her back. This wasn't unusual for couples to attend together for part of the shower, but typically the father-to-be would make a brief appearance before leaving the women to celebrate. Jake, however, seemed determined to stay. "Jake, the guys are meeting at Callahan's pub down the street," Kevin said, approaching them with a friendly smile. "I was about to head over there myself if you want to join." Jake's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I think I'll stay with Audrey. She needs help getting around these days. And I want to make sure she's comfortable." Audrey laughed, a sound that seemed slightly forced. "I'm fine, really. You should go have fun with the guys." "Nonsense," Jake said, his voice light but his hand tightening visibly on her waist. "I want to be part of everything." I exchanged a glance with Kevin, who gave an almost imperceptible shrug before heading out alone. As the host, I guided Audrey to the decorated chair of honor while Jake hovered nearby. Throughout the first hour, as we played baby shower games and Audrey opened small gifts, Jake remained within arm's reach of his wife. During a game of Guess the Baby Food, I noticed how Audrey would glance at Jake before answering, as if seeking permission. When she won a round, her celebration seemed muted, quickly followed by a look in his direction. "Isn't it a bit weird that Jake won't leave her side?" Sarah whispered to me as we refilled the punch bowl. "He's just being protective," I said, though something about the situation had begun to nag at me too. First time dad and all that. When it came time for Audrey to open the larger gifts, Jake positioned himself directly beside her chair, inspecting each item as she unwrapped it. His parents had purchased an expensive Italian stroller system, and Jake spent several minutes detailing its safety features to the room. Audrey sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. "And this is from Kevin and me," I said, handing her a large box wrapped in silver paper. Inside was a handcrafted wooden rocking chair I'd found from a local artisan, with a custom cushion embroidered with the baby's expected name, Oliver. When Audrey saw it, genuine emotion crossed her face for the first time that day. "Megan, it's beautiful," she whispered, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "It's nice," Jake commented, examining it critically, "though I'm not sure where we'll put it. We've already arranged the nursery furniture." "We'll find a place," Audrey said softly. As she stood to hug me, I noticed Jake's hand on her shoulder, his fingers pressing visibly into her skin. She flinched, so slightly I almost missed it. By this point, Kevin had returned from the pub and was standing quietly at the back of the room. His eyes followed Jake and Audrey with an intensity that seemed unusual for him. Normally relaxed at social gatherings, Kevin appeared tense, his arms crossed over his chest as he observed the interactions. After the gifts, we served cake and coffee. Jake insisted on getting Audrey's plate for her, selecting which food she could have. "No more caffeine," he said loudly when she reached for a regular coffee. "Remember what the doctor said about limiting intake. Actually, moderate caffeine is considered safe during pregnancy," commented Kevin casually from nearby. As an ER nurse, he knew medical facts well. "1 cup won't hurt." Jake's face hardened momentarily before he forced a smile. "We're being extra cautious with our son." As the party continued, Audrey excused herself to use the restroom. Jake immediately stood to accompany her. "I can help her if she needs anything," I offered, finding his behavior increasingly strange. "I've got it," Jake replied firmly, following Audrey down the hallway. Through the partially open door, I could hear their hushed voices, though not what they were saying. When they returned, Audrey's eyes seemed red, though she was smiling determinedly. The final activity was a toast to the parents-to-be. Jake took center stage, one arm wrapped possessively around Audrey's waist. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate our growing family," he began, his voice commanding the room. "Audrey and I are blessed to have such supportive friends and family. As we prepare to welcome our son, I promise to be the protector and provider that both he and Audrey need. Nothing matters more to me than keeping them safe and making sure they want for nothing." Something about his emphasis on protection sent a chill through me. I glanced at Kevin, who was watching the couple with unmistakable concern now. After the toast, as guests mingled and began to depart, Kevin approached me, his expression troubled. "Have you been watching them?" he asked quietly. "What do you mean?" I was distracted, mentally checking off the successful elements of the party. Jake and Audrey. Something's not right. I sighed, assuming he was picking up on the same awkwardness I'd noticed. He's being a bit controlling, but you know how he is. Always the perfectionist. Kevin shook his head slightly but didn't elaborate further. As the party wound down, we gathered for group photos. Audrey stood surrounded by friends, her smile appearing more genuine away from Jake's immediate presence. As she raised her arm to put it around Sarah's shoulders, the sleeve of her dress slid back slightly. Kevin, standing near the photographer, stiffened visibly. Minutes later, as I was coordinating cleanup with Sarah and Rachel, Kevin appeared at my side, his face pale. "We need to go," he said in a low, urgent voice. "Now." "What?" "We can't leave yet. I'm the host, and we still need to pack up the gifts for Audrey and Jake." "Megan," he insisted, his grip on my arm tightening slightly. "We have to go right now. I'll explain in the car." I looked at his face. My normally calm, collected husband looked genuinely alarmed. Something was very wrong. "Sarah, can you finish up here?" I asked, handing her the gift list I'd been recording. "Family emergency. I'll call you later." As Kevin practically pulled me toward the exit, I caught a final glimpse of Audrey, standing alone for a moment as Jake spoke with his parents. Our eyes met across the room, and something in her expression, a mixture of resignation and desperation, would haunt me for months to come. The walk to our car felt endless. Kevin moved with purpose, his hand on the small of my back guiding me forward. I kept glancing over my shoulder at the venue we were leaving behind, conflicted about abandoning my duties as host and confused by my husband's behavior. "Kevin, you're scaring me. What's going on?" I asked as we reached our Honda CR-V in the parking lot. "Get in," was all he said, his voice tense as he unlocked the doors. Once inside, Kevin didn't start the engine immediately. Instead, he sat gripping the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. I'd rarely seen him like this in our years together. As an ER nurse, Kevin prided himself on staying calm in crisis situations. Whatever he'd seen had deeply disturbed him. "Kevin," I prompted again. He turned to face me, his expression grave. "You really didn't see it, did you?" "See what?" "Kevin, you're not making any sense." He took a deep breath. "Audrey has bruises. Multiple bruises at different healing stages on her wrists and upper arms. I saw them when her sleeve rode up during photos." The words hung in the air between us. My mind refused to process what he was saying. That's not possible. She probably bumped into something. You know how clumsy she can be sometimes." Kevin shook his head, his medical training evident in his methodical explanation. "These weren't accidental bruises, Megan. There were finger marks, grip marks, the pattern, the coloration, the different stages of healing. I've seen this too many times in the ER not to recognize it." My stomach dropped as the implication sank in. "You think Jake is hurting her? That's crazy. We've known him for years." Abusers don't wear name tags, Megan. Many of them are extremely charming and well-liked publicly. It's how they get away with it for so long. I shook my head vigorously, unwilling to accept what he was saying. "No, not Jake. He adores Audrey. You saw how attentive he was being today." "That wasn't attentiveness," Kevin said quietly. "That was control. Did you notice how she wouldn't speak without looking at him first? How he decided what she could eat, who she could talk to, how he followed her to the bathroom?" I sat back against the seat, my mind racing through the events of the day with this new, terrible lens. The flinch when he touched her shoulder, the hushed conversation in the bathroom, her red eyes afterward, the constant checking for his approval. But my protest died on my lips as other memories surfaced. She has been canceling our lunch dates a lot. And she always has Jake with her lately. Kevin started the car but didn't put it in drive yet. Think about the last few months, Megan. The changes in her behavior. And I did think, painful realizations washing over me. Audrey, once outgoing and independent, had become increasingly isolated. Our girls' nights had dwindled, always with excuses about pregnancy fatigue. When we did see her, Jake was invariably present. She'd stopped wearing her favorite sleeveless tops months ago, switching exclusively to long sleeves even during the summer heat. There was the dinner party last month where Audrey knocked over a wine glass. I remembered now how she'd frozen in terror rather than laughed it off as the old Audrey would have. Jake had cleaned it up with tight-lipped efficiency while Audrey apologized repeatedly, her voice small. Remember 2 weeks ago when she canceled our shopping trip for the nursery? I said slowly. She said she fell down a few stairs and was sore. When I saw her the next day, she had makeup on her cheek. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Kevin nodded grimly. And the week before that, the kitchen accident that gave her that burn on her forearm? Perfectly circular. I thought it was from cooking, I whispered, horror growing within me. She said she accidentally touched the pot handle. Cigarette burns are circular like that, Kevin said softly. Jake smokes when he drinks. Tears filled my eyes as the evidence mounted. How did I not see this? She's my best friend. I was with her almost every week planning the shower. Abuse victims become very good at hiding, Kevin explained, his voice gentle now. And we see what we expect to see. You expected your friend to be happy about her pregnancy, so you interpreted her behavior through that lens. What do we do? I asked, wiping away tears. We can't just leave her there with him. We need to be strategic about this, Kevin cautioned. If we confront Jake, he'll deny everything and potentially take it out on Audrey later. If we confront Audrey directly, she might not be ready to admit what's happening. She might deny it to protect herself or because she's not ready to face it. So we do nothing? I was aghast. No. We educate ourselves first, then find the right way to let Audrey know she has support when she's ready. Kevin finally put the car in drive. Pregnant women in abusive relationships are in particular danger. The abuse often escalates during pregnancy. As we drove home in heavy silence, I kept seeing Audrey's face in my mind, the forced smile, the careful movements, the silent plea in her eyes when we looked at each other as I was leaving. My best friend was suffering, and I had been too wrapped up in throwing the perfect baby shower to notice. I feel like the worst friend in the world, I whispered. Kevin reached over to squeeze my hand. Don't do that to yourself. The only person at fault here is Jake. But now that we know, we can help her. We just need to be smart about it. That night, I barely slept. Every interaction with Audrey and Jake from the past year played on repeat in my mind, recontextualized with this terrible new understanding. Signs that seemed insignificant before now appeared glaring and obvious. Jake's possessiveness that I had mistaken for devotion. Audrey's increasing quietness that I had attributed to pregnancy contemplation. The gradual withdrawal from friends that I had accepted as natural life changes. I scrolled through photos on my phone, studying Audrey's face in images from different months, noticing the progression from her natural, uninhibited smile to the careful, measured expression she wore now. In the most recent pictures, her eyes held a wariness that broke my heart. How had I missed this? And more importantly, how could I help her now? The next morning, I called Audrey 3 times. All went to voicemail. I sent a text, had so much fun yesterday. The shower was perfect. Let's grab coffee this week. The response came hours later. Thanks for everything. Feeling tired. Maybe next week. It was a typical message on the surface, but now I wondered if Jake had written it, or if he was monitoring her communications. I found myself analyzing every word for hidden meanings, wondering if my friend was reaching out in code I couldn't decipher. I spent that day in a fog, alternating between desperate worry for Audrey and crippling self-doubt. What if Kevin was wrong? What if we were misinterpreting innocent situations and making terrible accusations about Jake? I could destroy a friendship, a marriage, with false suspicions. But then I remembered the bruises Kevin had described in clinical detail. The finger marks. The different stages of healing that suggested repeated incidents. My stomach churned. I don't know what to do, I confessed to Kevin that evening. If I confront her and I'm wrong, she'll never forgive me. If I say nothing and something happens, we need more information. Kevin said, ever the methodical thinker. And Audrey needs to know she has options when she's ready. The next day, I met Sarah for coffee. We had been friends since college, though not as close as Audrey and I. I chose my words carefully. Did you notice anything off about Audrey at the shower? Sarah stirred her latte, looking uncomfortable. You mean how Jake wouldn't let her out of his sight? Yeah, it was weird. Encouraged by her response, I pressed further. Has she said anything to you about their relationship recently? Sarah's eyes darted around the coffee shop before she leaned forward. I wasn't going to say anything because I thought maybe I was overreacting, but she took a deep breath. About a month ago, I stopped by their house to drop off some pregnancy books. Jake didn't know I was coming. When he answered the door, he seemed really angry. I heard Audrey crying inside, and when she came to the door, her lip was swollen. She claimed she'd walked into a door, but the way Jake was looking at her, Sarah shuddered. I should have said something then, shouldn't I? My heart sank. We all missed the signs, Sarah. But now we need to figure out how to help her. That afternoon, I researched domestic violence extensively. The statistics were horrifying. Pregnant women faced an increased risk of abuse, with pregnancy often triggering or escalating violent behavior in abusive partners. The articles emphasized how leaving was the most dangerous time for victims, requiring careful planning rather than impulsive action. I read first-hand accounts from survivors that made me physically ill, recognizing Audrey's behavior patterns described by strangers on the internet. The isolation. The excuses for injuries. The partner who was charming in public but different behind closed doors. I was deep in this disturbing research when my doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw Audrey standing alone on my porch, looking nervously over her shoulder. I opened the door immediately. Audrey, come in. She looked exhausted, with dark circles under her eyes poorly concealed by makeup. I can't stay long. Jake thinks I'm at the grocery store. I just wanted to thank you properly for the shower. It was beautiful. Her words sounded rehearsed as she stepped inside, declining my offer to sit. She remained standing in my entryway, one hand protectively over her pregnant belly. It was nothing, I said, watching her carefully. Are you okay, AUD? You seem stressed. Just pregnancy stuff, she said with a dismissive wave that didn't match her tense posture. Not sleeping well. I took a deep breath, deciding to create an opening. You know you can tell me anything, right? No matter what's going on, I'm here for you. Something flickered in her eyes, recognition. Maybe even longing before she shuddered her expression. Everything's fine. Perfect, actually. Her phone buzzed, and she jumped, checking it immediately. Her face paled slightly. Jake's wondering where I am. I should go. Audrey, I said gently, I noticed some bruises on your arm at the shower. Did something happen? She froze, her hand unconsciously moving to cover her wrist where long sleeves concealed whatever marks lay beneath. I'm just clumsy these days. The pregnancy throws off my balance. Is Jake hurting you? I asked directly, my heart pounding. Audrey's carefully maintained composure cracked momentarily. Her eyes welled with tears, and for a second, I thought she might confide in me. Then her phone buzzed again, and the moment shattered. Fear replaced vulnerability as she backed toward the door. I don't know what you're talking about. Jake is a wonderful husband. I need to go. Audrey, wait. Please, Megan. Just drop it. You don't understand. She left quickly, nearly running to her car. I stood in the doorway, watching helplessly as my best friend drove away. An hour later, a text arrived. Please stay out of my marriage. Everything is fine. I need space right now. The formal tone was so unlike Audrey that I was certain Jake had either dictated or written it himself. I showed it to Kevin when he got home from his shift. This is textbook, he said sadly. Abusers isolate their victims from support systems. He's cutting you off because you're a threat. That night, I broke down completely, sitting on our bathroom floor. I sobbed until I could barely breathe. Kevin held me, his own eyes damp. I don't know what to do, I cried. She's carrying a baby, Kevin. She's in danger. The baby's in danger. And she won't let me help her. We need professional guidance, Kevin said. Tomorrow, we'll call a domestic violence hotline. They'll know the best approach. As I finally fell into an exhausted sleep that night, I kept seeing Audrey's face, that brief moment when her mask had slipped, revealing the terror and desperation beneath. My best friend was trapped, and I was failing her. The domestic violence counselor was compassionate but realistic. Over speakerphone. Kevin and I explained the situation while she listened patiently. Unfortunately, this is very common, she explained. The most important thing right now is to keep lines of communication open without judgment. Victims often return to abusers multiple times before leaving permanently. They need to know support is consistently available. But she's pregnant, I said desperately. The baby is due in less than 2 months, which makes the situation more complex. But the approach remains the same, the counselor said. Send her a message that doesn't mention the abuse directly. Let her know you're there for her, no questions asked, anytime she needs you. Following this advice, I crafted a careful text. Audrey, I love you, and I'm here for you anytime, day or night, no questions asked. Whatever you need, whenever you need it. There was no response. The next 3 days passed in agonizing silence. I continued researching domestic violence resources, bookmarking websites with escape plans and local shelters, feeling simultaneously proactive and helpless. On the 4th day, I ran into Jake at the grocery store. My heart raced as he approached me with his typical charming smile, though his eyes remained cold. Megan, good to see you, he said smoothly. Audrey's been feeling under the weather. Pregnancy stuff. Doctor wants her to rest. I forced myself to maintain eye contact. Nothing serious, I hope. Nothing I can't handle, he replied, his emphasis subtle but unmistakable. She doesn't need visitors right now. Too stressful for the baby. The implied warning was clear. He knew I suspected something. Well, tell her I miss her, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Jake leaned slightly closer. You know, Megan, pregnancy is such a delicate time. Audrey needs positive influences around her. Supportive people who respect our marriage and our privacy. A chill ran through me. I've always supported Audrey. Have you? His smile never wavered. Filling her head with ridiculous concerns doesn't seem supportive to me. I'd hate for your friendship to become a negative factor in her pregnancy. Before I could respond, he nodded politely and walked away, leaving me shaking in the middle of the produce section. That night, I told Kevin about the encounter. He's threatening to cut her off from me completely. He's scared, Kevin said. You're a threat to his control. We need to be patient but ready. A week passed with no word from Audrey. I sent occasional light texts about neutral topics, a funny commercial I'd seen, a question about baby registry items, anything to maintain contact without pushing. The responses, when they came, were brief and impersonal. Then, at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, my phone rang. Audrey's name lit up the screen. Audrey? I answered immediately, fully awake in an instant. Megan. Her voice was barely audible, choked with tears. I'm at the Shell station on Maple Street. Can you come get me? Please don't tell anyone. I'm coming right now, I said, already grabbing clothes. Kevin was awake beside me, instantly alert. Stay where you are. I'll be there in 10 minutes. The drive to the gas station was the longest of my life. Kevin insisted on coming with me, but agreed to stay in the car initially so as not to frighten Audrey. When we pulled into the dimly lit station, I spotted her immediately, a hunched figure on a bench outside the convenience store, a small overnight bag at her feet. I ran to her, and when she looked up, I gasped involuntarily. Her right eye was swollen nearly shut, a violent purple bruise spreading across her cheekbone. Her lip was split, and she cradled her left arm protectively against her pregnant belly. Oh, Audrey, I whispered, carefully helping her up. He found your texts, she mumbled through swollen lips. He said I was conspiring against him, that I'd told you lies. Her voice broke. He's never hit my face before. Always where no one could see. The drive home was mostly silent. Audrey's staring out the window while occasionally issuing instructions. Don't go back to my street. Take the long way. Make sure no one is following us. Once safely inside our house, the full story emerged in broken fragments between tears. The abuse had started subtly during their first year of marriage, criticism that escalated to control, isolation that became imprisonment. The pregnancy had triggered an escalation, Jake's possessiveness becoming increasingly violent. I was so ashamed, she confessed, sitting at our kitchen table while Kevin gently examined her injuries with professional detachment. I thought I could fix it. That if I was perfect enough, patient enough, he would stop. This isn't your fault, I told her firmly. None of this is your fault. The baby, she whispered, her hand on her stomach. He kicked me. I need to know if the baby is okay. Kevin. who had been maintaining his professional composure, spoke gently. "We should get you to the hospital. I can call ahead to colleagues who specialize in these situations. They'll be discreet and thorough." Fear crossed Audrey's face. Jake checks the insurance claims. "He'll know. We have options," I assured her. "There are programs for this exact situation." Kevin left the room to make calls, his voice a low murmur in the living room. Audrey gripped my hand across the table. "I kept thinking about what you said that day at your house," she admitted. "That you noticed the bruises. No one had ever noticed before, or at least no one had said anything. It gave me hope, I guess, that someone could see through the facade." The hospital visit was handled with remarkable sensitivity, thanks to Kevin's connections. A female doctor examined Audrey thoroughly, documenting each injury with photographs for potential legal proceedings. An ultrasound confirmed that the baby appeared unharmed, the amniotic fluid protecting him from the violence inflicted on his mother. While at the hospital, a victim's advocate gently walked Audrey through her options. An emergency restraining order was filed that night, with police officers accompanying us back to our home in the early morning hours. "He'll be furious," Audrey whispered as we settled her into our guest room. "He'll come looking for me." "You're safe here," I promised, though I shared her fear. Jake's resources and determination made him a formidable threat. The next few days were a blur of legal consultations, police statements, and tearful conversations. Audrey's parents flew in from Arizona, initially shocked and then fiercely protective. Jake had charmed them too, maintaining the perfect son-in-law image during their infrequent visits. "We had no idea," her mother kept saying, her face etched with guilt. She always sounded so happy on the phone. Because he was monitoring those calls, Audrey explained tiredly. "He would stand right there, listening to everything I said. The restraining order was only the beginning." A domestic violence attorney took Audrey's case pro bono, helping navigate the complex process of separation while pregnant. Financial accounts had to be separated, a divorce filing prepared, custody considerations addressed before the baby even arrived. Jake's reaction was exactly as feared. First came the apologetic texts and calls, promises to change, reminders of their love story. When those were met with silence, his messages turned threatening, then frighteningly calm as he detailed how he would take custody of his son and make sure Audrey paid for her betrayal. The police increased patrols near our house. We installed security cameras and kept curtains drawn. Audrey jumped at every sound, convinced Jake was watching, waiting. Her fear wasn't paranoia. One evening, a neighbor called to report a man matching Jake's description sitting in a parked car down the street. Through it all, Kevin was our rock. His medical knowledge helped Audrey understand how trauma was affecting her body and mind. His hospital connections ensured she received excellent prenatal care despite the chaotic circumstances. And his calm presence diffused moments of panic when the situation felt overwhelming. 2 weeks after Audrey came to us, Jake violated the restraining order, showing up at our house late at night, pounding on the door and shouting accusations. The police arrested him, but he was released on bail the next morning with additional orders to stay away. The arrest marked a turning point. Jake's carefully constructed public image began to crumble as news of the domestic violence charges spread through their social circle. Some mutual friends took his side, believing his claims that Audrey was mentally unstable due to pregnancy hormones. But others came forward with their own observations of concerning behavior, creating a support network that strengthened our resolve. Audrey began attending therapy and a support group for domestic violence survivors. Each session seemed to return a small piece of the confident woman I'd known in college. Her voice grew stronger, her decisions more certain. She moved from our guest room to a temporary apartment with security features, her parents staying nearby to help. As her due date approached, detailed safety plans were created for the hospital. Her name would be kept off the patient registry. Security would be notified. Kevin arranged for trusted colleagues to be on her medical team. Despite our precautions, we all held our breath, knowing that Jake wouldn't easily surrender control over what he considered his property, both Audrey and the baby she carried. Audrey's water broke 3 weeks before her due date. I was with her when it happened, helping arrange baby furniture in her new apartment. The initial panic in her eyes had nothing to do with labor pain. "He'll find out," she whispered, gripping my arm. "Jake will know I'm at the hospital." The carefully orchestrated hospital security plan activated immediately. Kevin met us at a side entrance. escorting us through staff-only areas to a delivery room where the window blinds remained closed. Hospital security stationed an officer outside her door, checking IDs against an approved visitor list. Audrey's parents arrived shortly after, her mother taking my place as primary support person during delivery. I waited in the hallway with her father, both of us nervously checking our phones for updates and scanning each passing figure for any sign of Jake. 5 hours later, Oliver James was born, healthy despite his early arrival. The first time Audrey held him, something transformed in her expression, a fierce protectiveness that overcame fear. "He will never hurt you," she promised the tiny bundle in her arms. "I will never let anyone hurt you." The hospital discharge was coordinated with police presence, Audrey and Oliver leaving through a service entrance to an unmarked car. For the next few weeks, she stayed with her parents in a rental house across town, rarely venturing out except for necessary medical appointments. Jake's escalation continued. Despite the restraining order, he sent messages through mutual acquaintances, alternating between threats and pleas. He accidentally encountered Audrey's mother at the grocery store, charming and apologetic, insisting there had been a terrible misunderstanding. He filed for emergency custody of Oliver, claiming Audrey was unstable and had fabricated abuse allegations. The first court hearing was a nightmare. Jake arrived in an expensive suit, composed and articulate as he expressed concern for his son's well-being with his emotionally troubled mother. His family sat behind him in silent support, their presence a united front of respectability. Audrey trembled beside her attorney but spoke clearly when presenting evidence. Medical records, photographs of injuries, text messages documenting threats and control, the restraining order violation. With each piece of evidence, Jake's facade cracked slightly, his jaw tightening, his knuckles whitening around the edge of the table. The judge denied Jake's custody request and extended the restraining order, but the victory felt hollow as we left the courthouse. Jake's attorney had painted Audrey as unstable, vindictive, manipulative, character assassinations that left invisible wounds. "He's not going to stop," Audrey said quietly as we drove home. "He'll keep fighting until he gets what he wants." She was right. Over the next 3 months, Jake used every legal maneuver available to harass and intimidate. He demanded supervised visitation with Oliver. He contested financial arrangements. He found loopholes to delay divorce proceedings. Throughout this period, Audrey continued therapy, gaining strength and perspective. She connected with other survivors, finding community in shared experiences. The support group became a lifeline, each woman's story of resilience reinforcing Audrey's determination to protect herself and Oliver. I struggled with my own emotions during this time. Guilt for not recognizing the abuse sooner. Anger at Jake for the pain he'd caused. Fear that the legal system would eventually fail Audrey. Kevin noticed my withdrawal and suggested I seek therapy as well. "Secondary trauma is real," he explained gently. "You can't effectively support Audrey if you're drowning in your own guilt and anxiety." He was right, as usual. My therapist helped me process the complex emotions of being a support person for a domestic violence survivor, teaching me sustainable ways to help without burning out. For months after Oliver's birth, the situation reached a breaking point. Jake violated the restraining order again, this time more aggressively. He showed up at Audrey's apartment building, attempting to convince the security guard he was authorized to visit. When denied entry, he became belligerent, resulting in his arrest. While in custody, Jake's carefully constructed mask slipped completely. He made explicit threats against Audrey and the friends who poisoned her mind against him, specifically mentioning me and Kevin. These threats, recorded by officers, finally convinced the district attorney to pursue more serious charges. With Jake temporarily detained and facing significant legal consequences, Audrey experienced her first real period of safety. She began making longer-term plans, including relocating to Arizona near her parents once the divorce was finalized. Jake's family, finally confronted with undeniable evidence of his behavior, underwent their own reckoning. His mother contacted Audrey, tentatively at first, then with increasing emotional honesty. She revealed patterns of controlling behavior she'd observed but rationalized over the years. While not exactly an apology, it represented an important shift. They wanted a relationship with their grandson, but would respect Audrey's boundaries and safety requirements. The divorce proceedings moved forward, with Jake eventually accepting a settlement that included strictly supervised visitation rights he rarely exercised. The criminal charges resulted in probation and mandatory counseling, punishments that seemed insufficient for the damage he'd caused, but provided legal leverage to enforce the protective orders. 6 months after that terrifying night at the gas station, Audrey stood in her fully furnished apartment, Oliver sleeping peacefully in his crib, the handcrafted rocking chair from Kevin and me positioned nearby. She looked different, stronger, more centered. Her eyes clear and focused. I never thought I'd feel safe again, she told me as we shared tea at her kitchen table. There are still bad days, still moments of panic. But they're getting less frequent. I watched my friend cradle her mug, her hands steady. You're the strongest person I know, AUD. She shook her head. Not strong, just determined. There was a moment in the hospital, holding Oliver for the first time, when everything became crystal clear. I had to choose between fear and love. Between Jake's voice in my head telling me I was worthless and Oliver needing me to be whole. Outside, Kevin was installing additional security features on her windows, another layer of protection. Another step toward independence. The future still held uncertainties, potential court battles, the ongoing vigilance required to maintain safety. But watching Audrey with her son, seeing the peace gradually returning to her eyes, I knew the worst was behind us. The crisis had transformed all of us. Audrey was rebuilding her life with remarkable courage. Kevin had channeled his medical expertise into volunteer work with domestic violence survivors. And I had learned painful but necessary lessons about friendship, vigilance, and the complexity of human relationships. Not all scars were visible, but healing had begun. 1 year after Audrey first showed up at our door with a black eye and a broken spirit, I sat in her new living room watching Oliver take tentative first steps across the carpet. Now 18 months old, he was a happy, curious toddler with his mother's blue eyes and resilient spirit. The apartment was in a secure building with excellent safety features, though no longer in our town. 6 months earlier, Audrey had relocated to a city 2 hours away, close enough for regular visits, but far enough to create separation from painful memories and potential encounters with Jake. He hasn't tried to contact me in 3 months, Audrey mentioned as she joined me on the couch, handing me a glass of wine. His probation officer says he's been complying with the counseling requirements. That's good, I said cautiously, knowing Jake's patterns of dormancy followed by renewed efforts. You'll let me know if anything changes? Audrey nodded, understanding my concern. Immediately. But honestly, Megan, I think he's finally moving on. His family mentioned he's been seeing someone new. I felt a flash of worry for this unknown woman, but kept it to myself. Jake's family had maintained cautious contact with Audrey, seeing Oliver monthly under carefully structured conditions. They had, surprisingly, become allies in encouraging Jake to respect the legal boundaries and focus on his own rehabilitation. The divorce had been finalized 8 months ago, with a custody arrangement that required Jake to complete extensive therapy before progressing from supervised to unsupervised visitation, a condition he had thus far shown little interest in fulfilling. His initial obsession with controlling Audrey and claiming Oliver had gradually given way to indifference, which, while hurtful in its own way, brought welcome peace. How's the new job going? I asked, watching Oliver stack blocks with intense concentration. Audrey's face brightened. Really well. The flexibility to work remotely 3 days a week makes childcare so much easier. Her career in marketing had resumed cautiously at first, with a part-time position that allowed her to rebuild professional confidence alongside parenting. Recently promoted, she was thriving in a workplace that valued her creativity and accommodated her single-parent needs. And, she added with a slight blush, I actually met someone. This was new information. Oh! His name is Daniel. He's an architect I met through the community center project. We've been having coffee after volunteer meetings. She quickly added, just as friends, really. I'm not ready for more, and he knows that. I smiled, genuinely happy to hear this development. You deserve good friends, AUD. I have the best already, she said, squeezing my hand. I wouldn't have survived without you and Kevin. The statement hung between us, heavy with the shared memory of that desperate night and the challenging months that followed. You would have found your way, I said firmly. You're stronger than you know. The truth was, Audrey's journey had profoundly changed my own life as well. After supporting her through the crisis, I'd redirected my journalism career toward advocacy, writing pieces about domestic violence awareness and prevention. Kevin and I had become regular volunteers at the local women's shelter, offering medical advice and friendship to women in situations similar to Audrey's. And most unexpectedly, after years of trying, I had become pregnant 6 months ago. The doctor suggested that the reduction in stress after Audrey's situation stabilized might have contributed to this change in our fertility journey. Audrey was thrilled about becoming an honorary aunt, already planning playdates between Oliver and our future daughter. The parallel paths of our lives had diverged dramatically, but were now converging again in this new chapter. As the afternoon continued, Audrey shared more about her ongoing healing process. The therapy that had initially been crisis intervention had evolved into deeper work addressing childhood patterns and rebuilding self-trust. The support group she joined during the crisis had become a community of friends who understood her experience without judgment. The hardest part, she reflected as Oliver napped later, was forgiving myself for not seeing the red flags earlier, for staying as long as I did. There's nothing to forgive, I insisted. You did the best you could with the information you had at the time. And when it mattered most, you found incredible courage. She smiled thoughtfully. My therapist says the same thing. It's getting easier to believe. After a pause, she added, I spoke at a domestic violence awareness event last month. Just briefly, sharing parts of my story. It was terrifying but also healing. Somehow, I felt a surge of pride. That's amazing, Audrey. Several women approached me afterward, asking questions that made me realize they might be in similar situations. Her voice quieted. One of them called the hotline number I shared. The coordinator told me she left her partner 3 days later. The ripple effect of courage, one woman's bravery inspiring another's escape. The cycle of abuse interrupted, not just for Audrey and Oliver, but potentially for others who heard her story. As evening approached and I prepared to drive home, Audrey walked me to the door. Oliver balanced on her hip. You know what I've been thinking about lately, she said. That moment at the baby shower when Kevin insisted you leave. How differently things might have gone if he hadn't noticed what everyone else missed. I nodded, remembering the confusion and frustration I'd felt at being pulled away from hosting duties. He saw what I was too distracted to see. It makes me wonder how many other Audreys are out there right now, hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone to really see them. The question lingered with me during the drive home, through dinner with Kevin, and into the quiet evening hours. How many signs did we all miss daily? How many people were silently crying out for help while we looked past their carefully constructed facades? I placed a hand on my growing belly, thinking about the daughter we would soon welcome. Kevin and I had already discussed how we would teach her about healthy relationships, boundaries, and the courage to speak up, both for herself and for others who might not have a voice. The journey with Audrey had taught me that true friendship sometimes meant seeing what others couldn't or wouldn't see. It meant being willing to ask uncomfortable questions and offer help that might initially be rejected. It meant standing firm when easier paths presented themselves. Most importantly, it meant believing that people could rebuild themselves after devastating trauma, that safety, joy, and trust could be reclaimed one careful step at a time. As I prepare to end this story, I want to ask, have you ever had an instinct about a friend's relationship that you hesitated to act on? Or have you been the friend who needed someone to notice? Your experiences might help others recognize warning signs or find courage to reach out. Please share in the comments if you feel comfortable. And if my story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences. If you know someone who might benefit from hearing this, share it with them. Sometimes all it takes is one person noticing what everyone else has missed to change a life forever. Thank you for listening to my story. Remember, trust your instincts when something feels wrong. And never underestimate the power of simply being there for someone who's struggling. That presence alone can become the lifeline they need to find their way to safety.